I was about to turn it off when I heard a deafening roar. I was thrown backward like a rag doll. At that moment, I thought it was my end. The story you're about to hear is a true account. The names of characters and places have been changed to preserve the privacy of the authors. If you believe in miracles or have experienced one, leave your opinion in the comments and subscribe. I'll never forget that Saturday in August. The sun was shining brightly over Lake Sleepy Hollow, but there was something in the air, a tension I couldn't explain. Perhaps I should have paid more attention to that feeling, but I was too busy with the barbecue. "Carlos, the kids are hungry," my wife shouted from the pavilion. "How much longer until the meat is ready?" "Almost there," I replied, flipping the hamburgers. The smell of grilled meat filled the air, mixing with the laughter of children playing near the water. While watching the grill, I couldn't help thinking about my mother. She had been alone at home since Dad passed away, and although I tried not to worry, she was always in the back of my mind. "Hey, Maria," I called to my sister-in-law. "Can you watch the grill for a moment? I want to call Mom to see how she's doing." Maria nodded, taking the tongs from my hand. "Sure, but don't take too long. You know how your wife gets when food isn't ready on time." I smiled, grateful. "I'll be back in a minute." I walked to the front of the building, where I had seen a public phone. The sky, which just minutes ago was clear, was now darkening rapidly. Storm clouds were gathering over the lake, but I was so focused on making the call that I barely noticed. I reached the phone and inserted some coins. I dialed Mom's number, listening to the ringtone. 1, 2, 3 rings. Nothing. I frowned, worried. Mom always answered on the third ring. "Come on, Mom," I muttered, drumming my fingers on the phone booth. "Please answer." That's when I felt it. A change in the air, as if all the electricity in the world was concentrated at that point. The hair on my arms stood up. "What the hell?" I began to say, but my words were interrupted by a deafening roar. Lightning, bright and blinding, came out of the phone receiver. I had no time to react. The discharge hit me directly in the face, throwing me backward with incredible force. As I flew through the air, time seemed to slow down. I saw the phone melting, sparks flying in all directions. I heard distant screams, the sound distorted as if I were underwater. "Oh my God!" My mother-in-law's voice echoed in the distance. "Carlos!" My body hit the ground with a thud. The pain was intense, but strangely distant. I tried to move, to speak, but couldn't. My vision darkened, and the last thing I remember before losing consciousness was a strange and disturbing thought. Is this what dying feels like? I had no idea that moment, that simple act of making a phone call, would change my life forever. I didn't know I was about to experience something that would challenge everything I thought I knew about life, death, and what lies beyond. As I lay there, motionless, on the edge of existence, I had no way of knowing that I was about to embark on a journey that would take me beyond the limits of reality as I knew it. A journey that would begin with lightning and end with a symphony. The darkness gradually dissipated, like fog lifting on a cold morning. I found myself standing, looking at the public phone that still hung from its cable, swaying gently. Confusion overwhelmed me. Hadn't I just been struck by lightning? How could I be standing, unharmed? Something is terribly wrong, I thought, as a feeling of unease took over me. I looked around, expecting to see the chaos that a lightning strike surely would have caused. But everything seemed normal, except for one disturbing detail. No one was looking at me. It was as if I were invisible. "Help!" I shouted, but my voice sounded strange, as if coming from far away. "Can anyone hear me?" That's when I heard the screams. My mother-in-law, Elena, came running down the pavilion stairs, her face a mask of terror. "Carlos! Oh my God, Carlos!" she screamed. But her eyes looked through me, fixed on a point behind where I was standing. I turned slowly, an icy fear taking hold of me. What I saw left me breathless. There, lying on the ground, was me. My body lay motionless, eyes closed, clothes scorched from the lightning impact. It was a surreal vision, like looking at a distorted mirror of reality. "No, it can't be," I mumbled, approaching my own body. I tried to touch it, but my hands passed through the physical form as if it were smoke. The realization hit me with the force of another lightning bolt. I was dead, or at least my body was. This doesn't make sense, I thought, trying to stay calm amid the confusion. Where are the lights? The tunnel? The angels? Isn't there supposed to be some sign when you die? But there was none of that. Just a smooth and natural transition from one state to another. I was still me, with my thoughts, my memories, my personality intact. The only difference was that now I was outside my body, watching the scene like an invisible spectator. People began gathering around my body. I saw my wife, Laura, making her way through the crowd, her face pale with shock. Carlos, please wake up, she cried, kneeling beside my motionless form. I tried to comfort her, but my words didn't reach her ears. I'm here, Laura, I said softly, though I knew she couldn't hear me. I'm fine, in some strange way, I'm fine. A woman stepped forward, pushing others aside. I'm a nurse, she announced. Let me check. I watched as she began performing CPR on my body. It was a strange sensation, watching someone trying to revive a body I no longer inhabited. Part of me wanted to shout at her to stop, that I was fine, that I was right here. But another part understood the importance of what she was doing. While the nurse worked, I noticed that I could perceive the emotions of the people around me. Laura's fear, my friend's concern, the nurse's determination. It was as if I could feel their energies, their essences. Fascinating, I thought, momentarily distracted from the gravity of the situation by this new perception. It was then that I noticed something else. A soft light, barely perceptible, that seemed to emanate from all people. It was like an aura, but more subtle, deeper. I looked at my own hands and saw the same light emanating from them. What is this? I wondered aloud. Is this what we really are? Light and energy? The scene around me seemed to slow down. I saw a child crying in his mother's arms, an elderly man frantically dialing on his cell phone, probably calling emergency services. Each action, each emotion, seemed to have a purpose, a beauty I had never noticed before. I felt overwhelmed by a sense of peace and understanding. Despite the tragedy unfolding before me, I felt that everything was all right, that everything was as it should be. This is incredible, I muttered to myself. Why had I never seen the world this way before? It was at that moment when I felt a pull, as if something was calling me. I looked up and saw a bright light in the distance. It wasn't blinding or frightening, but warm and inviting. Is that? I began to ask, but the words faded in my mouth. I knew instinctively that light was my next destination, but before taking a step toward it, I looked one more time at my family and friends gathered around my body. I love you all, I said, knowing they couldn't hear me but hoping somehow they could feel it. I'll be fine. Everything will be fine. And with that, I took my first step toward the light, toward the unknown, toward an adventure that would forever change my understanding of life, death, and everything in between. As I took my first steps toward the light, a strange sensation came over me. It was as if I were suspended between two realities, with one foot in the world I knew and another in an unknown realm. Confusion and wonder battled within me. What's happening? I muttered to myself, though my voice sounded different, more like a thought than spoken words. I looked back one more time, observing the scene unfolding around my physical body. The nurse was still performing CPR, her face tense with concentration. My wife, Laura, was sobbing silently, holding my lifeless hand. Helplessness washed over me at not being able to comfort her. Laura, I'm here, I tried to say, but my words were lost in the air like leaves in the wind. That's when I noticed something strange. I could see through the walls of the pavilion, as if they were made of glass. I saw children playing on the floor above, unaware of the tragedy unfolding below. I saw my brother-in-law running down the stairs, his face pale with shock. This is incredible, I thought, marveling at this new perception. I decided to explore this new ability. Floating gently, I rose to the second floor of the pavilion. I passed through the ceiling as if it didn't exist, finding myself in the middle of the interrupted birthday party. The balloons floated motionless, the cake half cut, the presents forgotten in a corner. Where are the angels? I wondered aloud. The trumpets? The final judgment? Isn't there supposed to be some sign that I've died? But there was none of that. Just this smooth and natural transition from one state to another. It was disconcerting and, at the same time, strangely comforting. I went back down, passing through the floor as if it were air. I stopped next to my body, observing it with a mixture of fascination and detachment. It was me, but at the same time, it no longer was. It's just an empty shell, I realized. I am this now, this consciousness, this energy. I tried to touch my own face, but my ethereal hands passed through the flesh as if it were mist. It was a strange sensation, to see my body but not be able to interact with it. Am I really dead? I wondered. Or is this some kind of out-of-body experience? I had no answers, only more questions. I watched as the ambulance arrived, the paramedics running with their equipment. I saw them connect the defibrillators to my chest, how my body jerked with each shock. It's useless, I wanted to tell them. I'm not there anymore. But part of me wanted them to succeed. Despite the peace I felt in this new state, the thought of leaving my family, of not seeing my children grow up, filled me with sadness. That's when I felt another presence. I couldn't see it, but I could feel it, warm and comforting. Don't be afraid, said a voice that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. This is just the beginning. The beginning of what? I asked, my voice trembling with emotion. Of your true journey, the voice replied. You've lived your entire life in a world of shadows, Carlos. Now it's time to see reality as it truly is. With those words, I felt something change within me. It was as if a veil had been lifted from my eyes. Suddenly, I could see beyond the physical. I saw the energy that flowed through all things, connecting everything and everyone. It's beautiful, I whispered, overwhelmed by the vision. I saw the threads of light connecting people, brighter between those who loved each other. I saw the spark of life in every being, from humans to plants and insects. This is what we really are, I understood. Not bodies, but energy, consciousness, love. I looked at my family one more time, seeing not just their physical bodies, but their true essences. The love I felt for them was amplified, becoming almost tangible. I love you, I said, knowing that although they couldn't hear my words, perhaps they could feel my presence. I'll always be with you, in one way or another. I felt the presence that had spoken to me before gently urging me to move forward. It was time to leave the physical world behind and venture into the unknown. With one last glance at my earthly life, I turned toward the light that was calling me. I no longer felt fear, only an immense curiosity and a sense that I was about to discover truths that went beyond my previous understanding. I'm ready, I said, taking a step toward the light. And so, I left behind the world I knew, embarking on a journey that would challenge everything I thought I knew about life, death, and existence itself. A journey that would lead me to understand the true meaning of being between two worlds. As I stepped into the light, I felt as if I were immersing myself in an ocean of pure energy. The transition was smooth, without jolts, as if I had always belonged to this new state of being. The scene of the pavilion, my body, my family, everything gradually faded away, replaced by an indescribable vastness. Where am I? I wondered aloud, though I was no longer sure if I was really speaking or just thinking. There was no answer, at least not in words. Instead, I felt a comforting presence, as if the universe itself was embracing me. It was a sensation of unconditional love, so intense it almost hurt. I tried to look around, but I realized I no longer had eyes in the traditional sense. I was pure consciousness, able to perceive in all directions simultaneously. What I saw, or rather what I experienced, defied all description. Colors I had never seen before danced around me, forming complex patterns that seemed to tell the story of the universe. Melodious sounds, more beautiful than any earthly music, resonated in perfect harmony. And most amazing of all, I could feel every particle of energy, every vibration of the cosmos. This must be heaven, I thought, marveled by the beauty surrounding me. But something told me this was much more than the heaven of traditional beliefs. It was as if I had accessed a higher level of reality, where the limitations of the physical world no longer applied. As I floated in this sea of consciousness, I began to notice that I could move just by thinking about it. I moved through dimensions I didn't even know existed, each more amazing than the last. At one moment, I found myself observing Earth from space. But it wasn't Earth as we know it. I could see the energy field surrounding it, the currents of thought and emotion that flowed around the planet like luminous rivers. Incredible, I whispered, amazed by the interconnection of everything. Then, in an instant, I found myself in the heart of a distant star, experiencing nuclear fusion not as a physical process, but as a dance of primordial energies. How is this possible? I wondered, marveling at my ability to be anywhere in the universe just by wishing it. That's when I felt it, a gentle but insistent pull, calling me towards something more. I followed the impulse, curious to discover where it would lead me. I found myself floating above the pavilion again, but this time it was different. I could see the entire scene from multiple perspectives simultaneously. I saw my wife, Laura, sitting at a table, painting children's faces. The colors of the paints shone with supernatural intensity. Each brushstroke was like a symphony of light and energy. I memorized every detail of the scene, the exact position of each child, the order in which they waited their turn, even the patterns of shadows on the ground. Something told me this information would be important later. Why am I seeing this? I wondered, intrigued by the relevance of this particular scene. I had no time to reflect more on it. An irresistible force pulled me upward, through the pavilion's roof and beyond. I ascended rapidly, leaving behind Earth's atmosphere in a matter of seconds. And then, I saw it. Or rather, I experienced it. A current of pure energy, brighter than 1,000 suns, vaster than all galaxies combined. It was a bluish-white light that emanated indescribable love and peace. Every particle of my being vibrated in resonance with this energy. This must be God's energy, I thought, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what I was witnessing. I immersed myself in this current of light, letting it envelop me completely. Each moment was an eternity of ecstasy, each sensation a cosmic revelation. I understood, in that instant, that everything was connected, that the entire universe was a living, conscious being, and that I was an integral part of it. Glimpses of past, present, and future lives flashed before me. I saw the evolution of the cosmos, from the Big Bang to the universe's last breath. I understood the purpose of existence, the nature of time and space, and many other mysteries that had eluded humanity for millennia. It's too much, I thought, overwhelmed by the vastness of knowledge flowing through me. How can I process all this? But as I thought about it, I realized I didn't need to process it. It simply was, and I was part of it. Understanding came not through thinking, but through being. I don't know how long I spent in that state of cosmic communion. It could have been seconds or eons. Time, as we know it, had no meaning there. But even in the midst of that transcendental experience, I felt something calling me back. A connection that wasn't ready to be broken. A task that wasn't yet complete. Do I have to go back? I asked, though I already knew the answer. The answer came not in words, but in a deep understanding. My time on Earth wasn't yet finished. I had a purpose to fulfill, a mission to complete. With a mixture of reluctance and acceptance, I felt myself beginning to descend. The current of divine energy gradually faded, replaced by the familiarity of the physical world. As I returned, I carried with me the certainty that death was not the end, but just another step in an eternal journey. And although part of me yearned to stay in that realm of infinite light and love, I knew I had to share what I had learned with the world. I will return, I promised, as earthly reality began to take shape around me once again. And when I do, nothing will ever be the same. The descent was abrupt, as if I had been yanked from a deep dream. The peace and ecstasy I had experienced in the current of divine energy vanished in an instant, replaced by a sensation of heaviness and acute pain. No, I screamed internally. Please don't make me go back. But it was too late. I felt my consciousness being dragged back to my physical body, as if I were being forced to put on a suit that was too small and full of needles. The pain hit me like an avalanche. Every nerve in my body seemed to be on fire. The point where lightning had struck my face burned as if I had been branded with a hot iron, and the place where the electricity had exited my foot felt like it was being pierced with a white-hot knife. My God, I thought, struggling to breathe. How can being alive hurt so much? I tried to open my eyes, but my eyelids seemed to weigh tons. The sounds around me came distorted, as if I were underwater. I could hear voices, but couldn't understand what they were saying. "He's coming back." I heard someone shout, the voice sounding distant and close at the same time. I felt hands on my chest, pressing rhythmically. CPR, I realized. Someone was trying to revive me. "Stop," I wanted to say. "I'm here already. I'm back." But the words wouldn't come out of my mouth. Gradually, my senses began to sharpen. The smell of ozone and burned flesh filled my nostrils, making me feel nauseous. The metallic taste of blood flooded my mouth. Finally, I managed to open my eyes. The daylight blinded me momentarily, causing involuntary tears to roll down my cheeks. When my vision cleared, I saw the worried face of a woman leaning over me, the nurse who had been performing CPR. "He's conscious," she said, her voice full of relief and amazement. I wanted to thank her, tell her I appreciated her efforts, but when I tried to speak, the words came out confused and distorted. I'm a doctor," I managed to stammer, immediately feeling stupid for saying something like that at that moment. The nurse looked at me with a mixture of confusion and concern. "It's okay, sir. The ambulance is on its way. Try not to move." Not moving. What a tempting idea. Every movement, no matter how small, sent waves of pain through my body. But despite the physical pain, a part of me desperately yearned to return to that state of peace and unconditional love I had experienced. "Please," I pleaded silently, "let me go back. I don't want to be here." But I knew it wasn't my decision. Something, or someone, had decided that my time on Earth wasn't yet finished. I heard the sound of sirens approaching. The people around me moved frantically, speaking in urgent and worried voices. I tried to focus on their words, but my mind kept going back to the experience I had just had. How could I explain to them what I had seen? How could I make them understand the magnitude of what I had experienced? Frustration mixed with physical pain, causing tears of helplessness to spring from my eyes. "Laura," I managed to say, searching for my wife with my gaze. She appeared in my field of vision, her face stained with tears and smeared mascara. "I'm here, Carlos," she said, taking my hand. "Don't speak. Everything will be all right." I wanted to tell her that I was already fine, that I had experienced something beyond our earthly understanding. I wanted to tell her about the light, the love, the connection with the entire universe. But the words refused to form. The paramedics arrived, pushing people aside to reach me. They began examining me, asking questions I could barely process. "Sir, can you tell me your name?" one of them asked. "Carlos," I managed to respond, my voice barely a whisper. "Good, Carlos. You've suffered an electrical shock. We're going to take you to the hospital for a complete evaluation." As they placed me on the stretcher, my mind continued struggling to reconcile the two realities that now coexisted in my consciousness. On one side, the pain and confusion of my physical body. On the other, the vivid memory of peace and enlightenment I had experienced. "I don't want to go," I mumbled, unsure if I meant to the hospital or this plane of existence in general. Laura, who walked alongside the stretcher, squeezed my hand. "You have to go, love. You need medical attention." I closed my eyes, exhausted by the effort of being conscious. As I slipped into unconsciousness, one thought persisted. This isn't the end. It's just the beginning of something much bigger. And with that thought, I sank into darkness, carrying with me the knowledge that life, death, and everything in between was much more than I had ever imagined. My journey was just beginning, and I had the feeling that the greatest revelations were yet to come. The days and weeks following my near-death experience were a whirlwind of confusion, introspection, and discovery. I found myself struggling to reconcile the life I had known with the new reality that had opened before me. At first, I was afraid to talk about what I had experienced. Being a doctor, I was used to thinking in scientific and rational terms. How could I explain something that defied all conventional logic and understanding? Carlos, are you sure it wasn't just a hallucination caused by the electrical shock? A colleague asked when I finally dared to mention something. I shook my head, frustrated. No, Jorge, this was real. More real than anything I've experienced in my life. But I saw the doubt in his eyes, the same doubt I saw in the eyes of almost everyone I tried to explain it to. Even Laura, my wife, though she tried to understand, often seemed worried when I talked about my experience. Honey, maybe you should talk to someone, a professional, she suggested one night, her voice full of concern. I'm not crazy, Laura, I responded, more harshly than I intended. What I saw, what I felt, was real. But as the days passed, I realized that something within me had fundamentally changed. I no longer saw the world in the same way. Every interaction, every moment, seemed to be imbued with deeper meaning. And then, something extraordinary began to happen. One morning, as I was preparing for work, I heard a melody. It didn't come from any external source, but seemed to resonate within my own mind. It was beautiful, ethereal, different from any music I had ever heard before. What is that? I muttered to myself, closing my eyes to listen better. The melody grew in intensity, filling every corner of my consciousness. It was as if the music I had heard on the other side, in that stream of divine energy, had found a way to manifest in this world. Without thinking twice, I headed to the nearest music store. I need a piano, I told the salesperson, surprising myself with the urgency in my voice. What model are you looking for? He asked. I don't know, I admitted. I've never played before. The salesperson looked at me skeptically but showed me several models. When my fingers touched the keys of a grand piano, I felt an instant connection. It was as if the instrument was calling to me. The following days were a whirlwind of obsessive practice. I spent every free moment at the piano, trying to translate the melodies I heard in my mind into tangible notes. Laura watched me with a mixture of amazement and concern. Carlos, since when do you know how to play the piano? She asked one night, after listening to me play for hours. I don't know, I responded honestly. I just know. As I practiced, the melodies became clearer, more complex. They weren't simply songs, I realized. They were messages, fragments of the universal wisdom I had experienced during my journey to the other side. One night, I woke up startled at 3:15 in the morning. A new melody, more powerful than any of the previous ones, resonated in my mind. I rushed to the piano, my fingers flying over the keys almost of their own accord. The music that emerged was indescribable. It was as if I was directly channeling the energy of the universe through my hands. Tears rolled down my cheeks as I played, overwhelmed by the beauty and depth of what I was experiencing. When I finished, I sat in silence, trembling. I knew something extraordinary had just happened. It's a gift, I whispered, finally understanding. A gift from the other side. From that moment on, my life changed drastically. Music became my new passion, my new way of communicating with the world. I began composing frantically, trying to capture every melody, every vision I received. My medical practice, which had once been the center of my life, took a back seat. Though I continued practicing, my true mission now was to share the music, share the message of love and universal connection I had experienced. I organized concerts, first small ones, then increasingly larger. People came from everywhere to hear my music, drawn by something they couldn't explain but felt deeply. Your music, it's as if it comes from another world. A listener once told me with tears in their eyes after a concert. I smiled, knowing they were closer to the truth than they imagined. As my fame grew, so did the questions about the origin of my musical talent. How could someone with no prior musical training create such complex and emotional compositions? Finally, in an interview, I decided to tell the truth. My music comes from a near-death experience, I explained. From a journey to the other side, where I experienced connection with the entire universe. Every note, every melody, is an attempt to translate that experience into something we can understand in this world. To my surprise, instead of mockery or skepticism, my words were met with a wave of understanding and empathy. It turned out that many people had had similar experiences, but were afraid to talk about them. My music became a bridge, a way to connect this world with the other, to share a bit of that peace and unconditional love I had experienced. As I sat at the piano each day, I felt I was fulfilling the purpose for which I had been sent back. It wasn't just about the music. It was about sharing a message of hope, of connection, of the continuity of consciousness beyond physical death. Death is not the end, I would tell those who came to listen to me. It's just the beginning of an even greater journey. And as my fingers danced over the keys, translating the melodies of the universe into sounds that everyone could understand, I knew I had found my true calling. I was a messenger, a bridge between two worlds, using music as my universal language. Every note I played was a reminder of that transcendental experience, a promise that there is much more beyond what we can see or touch. And with each concert, each composition, I felt I was one step closer to experiencing that divine connection again, to returning home.